All right, so in this chapter, we are talking about JavaScript objects, and we will be looking at quickly some built-in objects, and then we'll look at how we can create our own custom objects. So let's just dive right in. I'm starting with Visual Studio Code, and I have a file open that I started called index.js, and I'm just going to start right in. So the first thing I want to address is the fact that JavaScript has its own built-in objects. And we've been playing with some of those. For example, math is an object that we've been playing with. And this should probably look familiar from the Great Race. And I'm just going to put it in there and copy and paste. I don't have to type all that in. But math is an object. It's a built-in object. And if you're familiar with object-oriented programming from other languages, you'll know that sometimes when you create an object, you have to create a new instance. Sometimes if it's a static class, you don't have to create a new instance. You can just use it. For example, math, we have direct access to. We don't have to create a new instance of it. We can just put it into our code and run it. So let's just remember that we can type in node and the name of the file to run this JavaScript code directly from our terminal without having to open a browser. So math is a built-in JavaScript object. If you look in W3 schools, there is a great listing for the date object. And in fact, date, D-A-T-E, is a JavaScript object. However, it's an object that we have to create a new instance of. So if I want to utilize date for the date, for example, I will have to create a new instance of date. And so if we then print out console.log, let's see what happens when we print out the date. We got to spell it right and case. Okay, and so if I do that now, I can just use my arrow up key to do node and node index. And then here you can see that there is quite a long dated format there for me to utilize. I guess I'll go into my browser here and I'll pull up W3 schools, and I'll bring it so you can see it. And I'm going to do a search on JavaScript date object. JavaScript date reference is where I'm headed. And on the left-hand side here, if you scroll down, let's see, this isn't quite where I thought I was going to go. So I'm going to go to JavaScript. And I'm going to go down here to where it says dates. So I'm at the JavaScript tutorial, and here's JavaScript dates. And so this gives you a little bit more information about utilizing the JavaScript date object. But if I go down to date methods, this is going to get where it gets a little bit more important. And here I can see that I can utilize the method of the object to get specific information, such as the date. I can get the day, recognize that 0 is Sunday, then 6 is Saturday. Get the full year, get hours, get milliseconds. So here you can see get month is starting at 0, so that's January. So if I wanted to access information about the date, then again, for time saving, I'm just going to copy this statement in that I already have. And we'll just console log quite a number of those methods. We'll combine a couple of those methods to get the day, the month, and the full year of the date object that I created in line 3. So if I save that and run it, I get 1/9/2017. Not real pretty, but we're getting introduced to the date object. So that's all well and good, and we'll look at utilizing dates a little bit more specifically at another time. But these are things that we should already be comfortable with, most likely, using objects that are already, I guess we can say objects that are already available to us, that we can access their properties or their methods. But now let's create some of our own. So let's declare some objects. Okay, and I can do it like this, var person equals new object. That works, not a problem there. Or I can do var inventory. Just creating a little different one. And then similar to what we did with arrays, remember that we're a lot more loosely typed when we talk about JavaScript than maybe something you might have had experience in the past with C# or Java, for example. So those are some ways that we can do it, but we can also do what's called an object literal. In other words, I'm going to create a dog and open and closing braces like we did above. Except inside of it now I'm going to create some name value pairs that will define some properties of the dog. For example, the dog might have a name, and then I'm going to use a comma, and the dog could have an age and 15. So the last name key value pair that I'm putting in this object literal does not have a comma. So I will differentiate. If I had another one in here, I could put color, I don't know, Odie was yellow. So that would be followed by a comma. I guess I have to use a semicolon here and not a colon. There we go. So any number of properties that you want, name, key value pairs, and then commas after each one except the last one. So we could do this. Now we're creating a dog object. And if I wanted to print it out, then I could do something like console log dog, and maybe I just want his name, so we could do that, and I go ahead and print that out. So now we're getting the dog's name, Odie, here. All right, let me what else am I printing out here? Let's just comment this out so we don't have extraneous things being printed out on our terminal here. I'm going to type CLR to clear the screen, or I guess it's CLS to clear the screen. There we go. So things aren't looking quite so confusing. Okay, so now we're creating a dog object. Sounds good so far. You can also, if you wanted to, type in console. Another way you could get at that property is with the brackets. Dog name. So that would do the same thing. Let's put something different in this time. Let's put color. So that's another way that you could do get access to that same property. And so by Node.js, there we go. So I get both of those values. So that's one way to do it as well. And so that kind of lends itself to the fact that we could loop through the properties and the values in a for loop. So let's give that a try. For var. Now we're going to use a different syntax this time. Instead of doing where we do for var for I equals 0, I less than length, etc., etc. Now we're going to use the syntax that just says for property in, and then our object, which is dog. So this is another way to loop through each of the values. I'm missing a parenthesis here. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to be looping through all of the different key value pairs in our object. And so if I type that out, console.log, and let's try properties and see what we get. And I'm going to comment these out again for clarity. So I only have one thing printing out at a time. Okay, so let's give that a try and see what we get. So now we're getting the keys, aren't we? So wouldn't it be nice if we could get the values? So let's do this. Let's concatenate, plus I'll put a space, plus, and then I can put prop. Remember that that's getting the key. So we said above here that I could get the value by using the brackets, and then I can put in here, oh, this should be dog. Did that wrong. Dog. And then in here I can put prop. So that'll get the values. So there's my object, which is what we did here. And then I can get at each of the values by the key name, which is what I'm getting with prop. So let's see if that works. There we go. All right.